Hello, CAD community. My name is Chloe Wardrick, and I'm a third-year architecture student. And today I will be interviewing Chris Hong from English Hong Architecture. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks, Chloe. I'm Chris Hong. I'm a '05 graduate of the architecture department. Started my career in Seattle working for NBBJ, moved back home to Hawaii in 2011, worked several companies, Group 70 International, Redmont Group, and then formed my own partnership in May of last year.
So, could you share more about your career path and how you ended up in your current role?
My father is actually an architect, so I kind of grew up within the architecture business and understood from a very early age what it would take. So going with my dad to work in his office on the weekends got me exposed to that environment early on and got me intrigued. So I started interning when I was a sophomore in high school. Applied to schools. Thankfully, somehow got into Cal Poly. And loved my time there. After that, was thankful to get a job at NBBJ in Seattle and worked on healthcare projects while I was up there. Really enjoyed my time, learned a ton, met a lot of really great people that I still keep in touch with, and then moved back home in 2011 to continue to work on healthcare projects. Was able to diversify my career over several different project types. Left that company to be the head of architecture of a company called the Redmont Group, which did property valuation, architecture, construction, property management. And so I was able to help a growing company establish themselves within the architecture community, stayed there for a couple of years, and then an opportunity came by to form my own partnership.
Okay, so what advice do you have for students to prepare for professional practice?
A couple of the big things that I try to emphasize is empathy and self-reflection. And I think that when you work on your soft skills, such as empathy, you're able to really understand who you are designing for. Because oftentimes we're dealing with clients that it may be their first project, they've never done construction or design, and they don't really know what they're asking for. And so how are you able to work with them through the process and understand who they are as people in order to deliver the best project you can for them? And I think also in working with your other coworkers, whether you're starting out and you're an intern architect and you're trying to find your way in the firm, dealing with people your own level and bosses and further up, or when you become a leader and dealing with staff that work for you, it's really understanding who they are as people and what is the best way to communicate with them. Really, the self-reflection part comes in at if you don't understand what your own filters are and why you see the world the way you do, then how can you possibly understand someone else's filters and how they see the world?
Well, that kind of segues nicely into kind of the next question that I have. This is kind of based on your firm in general. So I know that English Hong kind of expresses the importance of being a trusted advisor to their clients and being the so-called linchpin. So what does it mean to be the linchpin or a linchpin architect?
Our goal is that our clients come to us before they have a site, before they have a project in mind, but really they come to us because they know that we always have their best interests in mind. Even in the site selection of the expansion, we're working side by side with them to say, well, why don't we do a cost benefit analysis of remodeling your current space, or let's look at what you need to do. And so it's not just looking at our own interest of saying, yeah, pay us to build a building. We'd love to design for your building, but it's really understanding who they are as people, who they are as a business, who they are within the community, and how can we use the architecture and the built environment to help them be a better version of who they are. What does this building say to their members, to the community? And so it deals with having the marketing side of that. And to me, a trusted advisor is also a teacher, right? Is that, yes, ultimately is their client's decision. They're coming to us because they trust our opinion, but when we come to a decision point, we like to give them okay, you could go this route, here's the implications, here's what it means, or you could go this route, here's your implications, here's what it means. We recommend going this way for these reasons, but ultimately leaving it up to them, right? So that we are as transparent as possible. In terms of being a linchpin, it's we're running point. We're the conductors for all these other entities, state entities, county entities, engineers, other people that are involved with the process. It comes through us on the communication, the collaboration, and all of these pieces. And really, we want to make sure that we are the ones holding everything together.
Awesome. So what would you say are the major differences between working in Washington and working in Hawaii?
I loved my time in Seattle, and it was nice to be in a city where you could see so many great examples of architecture, and the community itself was very, very open. But the downside of that is that as the size of the city, you're just a number essentially, right? It's harder to make a name for yourself. And here in Hawaii, there's a strong sense of community here where you have some clients that have never left the island, right? So their experience to what is possible is more limited than someone who lives on the continent, where you can drive and see different things and you have a lot more exposure. So if you're dealing with well, if we've been doing it for 30 years, then why would you want to change it? Sort of mentality. That education process and building up that trust allows you to try new building materials, to try new forms, and really bring the blend of kind of national best practices with local culture. But on the other side, with the small community, your reputation, your social, your personal, and your professional reputation is everything. And that was a surprising moment for me, where I was coming from NBBJ with a certain resume and backlog of projects and saying, look, I'm qualified to do these projects. You should trust me to do these projects. And having clients say, yeah, but we've been working with these guys for 20 years. We'd rather work with these guys. I quickly had to learn that it wasn't what was on my resume, but it was what my reputation was in the community that would allow me to get work. Right? And so working in that small town mentality, becomes, as you try and rise to the top, it becomes about servant leadership, right? It is that you can't have a huge ego. You have to show that you're a member of the community. You have to show that you're there for other people before you're able to build that trust. It's really, again, going back to that empathy and those understanding that self-reflection and realizing that, okay, what is it truly that your clients are looking for, and what is going to drive the decision to choose who they want to work with. I love both places. They just are different in the challenges that they represent.
So did you know, coming out of college, what industry or what type of buildings you kind of wanted to design straight into your career, and how has it evolved from this point in your life?
So going into my 5th year, I had this plan of, okay, well, spring break, I'm going to apply to all these firms in Seattle, because I had narrowed down, I want to either work in Seattle or Oakland, because I was chasing after low-income housing or something with a social aspect to it. But I had also loved seeing Seattle on one of our class field trips and interviewed a bunch of places, and was going to pair that and bookend that with, after graduation, do the same thing in certain Bay Area firms. So send out my resume, say, okay, I want to interview, I'm interested in working at these firms. Well, in my naivete, not realizing that when you interview, they expect an answer right away.
Yeah.
So I had gotten some acceptance answers, and NBBJ in particular was kind of pushy about it. And they're like, no, we need to know now. So prior to even graduating or having a chance to apply to the Bay Area firms, I had to make a decision. And rather than take the gamble of saying no to them and not getting an offer in San Francisco, I said, okay, well, I'm going to take this offer because it's a good firm, it's a good opportunity. And the trade-off at that point was the studio that was hiring me was a healthcare studio. And I had never even considered doing healthcare design, but in meeting with the people in the studio, hearing about their design process, and coincidentally having 3 people in that studio who actually were from Hawaii, who had relocated to Washington, helped with that as well. And so I joined that firm thinking, okay, well, there's so much to learn. What better place to learn at some place like NBBJ? And in healthcare, there's a huge social aspect and really understanding and designing for people, right? Not just the patients, but the staff, the families. and I just got caught up in it. And the social aspect and social designing of healthcare was something that I absolutely fell in love with. And so that was, one detour that my career took. And I thought, okay, well, 6 years of this healthcare at a big firm, okay, this is where my career is going to go now, right? And so when I was applying to firms back in Honolulu, there was one of the top two firms which was trying to get into healthcare. And they hired me because none of their current staff had actually done any built healthcare work. So I said, perfect. Well, large firms have politics. I ended up actually not working on any of those healthcare projects and worked on a bunch of other stuff, from higher education to financial institutions to other projects. That shifted my career again into more financial institutions and became one of the early adopters of this bank transformation process. So that started at Group 70, continued through Redmont Group, and then now in the new partnership, my partner was also doing a lot of financial institutions, a lot of credit unions at the time, and so that became how we came together. And so now our firm focuses on financial institutions. You never know where your career is going to take you, and while I still strongly believe in specialists, because these project types are so complicated that it requires dedication to that craft to really understand a certain project type. There are certain fundamentals, again, on the empathy side and the learn by doing, that it allows you to kind of pivot when these choices appear. So.
Awesome.